On today's show, it is a fun Friday yet again with our guy Jake Garegnani of CBS 8 Sports San Diego to answer a bunch of questions, including, but not limited to, the Mike Shildt fallout, the shockwaves. Who does Jake think could be the next manager? Any different than my guesses? We'll have to see. And responding to some of your questions about Yu Darvish, the Juan Soto trade, and a whole lot more. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, October 17th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've covered this team for 6 years now. Not just for this podcast, though, but various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. And also, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. What an offer. And what a good day today is. I'm being joined by my frequent guest on this show, Jake Garegnani, good bud of mine from CBS 8 Sports San Diego. He's covering important stuff over there. You know, he's not in his house with his Pikachu guy and his weird baseball. Not even weird. That baseball ball rocks. I don't care what anybody says. That thing's cool. But he's here on today's show to talk about a bunch of different topics, of course, with Shildt being one of them. But before we get into it, Jake, man, how you doing?
Pretty good. Been a busy week, man. Been a busy week. A shocking week. Everything under the sun. And then as you start to kind of peel back the layers of the onion, the shock starts to fade and all of the puzzle pieces kind of start to come together. But busy week, man.
Busy week, I imagine. So let's, you know what, guys, we're going to talk about Shildt first, and then we're going to talk about the candidates and blah, blah, and it's a mailbag. Okay, blah, blah. You guys know what you're in for. But let's just get into it. Your reaction, especially because you cover this stuff. For me, it's like, oh, cool, I know what I'm doing on my episode today. But for you, I imagine it's more hectic. I imagine that, you know, was there any idea at all? Like, what is it like, especially in your position? And then just in general, what was your reaction to the news that Mike Shildt would be retiring?
Well, when it came in, it was earlier out here in San Diego. And I woke up, you know, I had worked late the night before, woke up, looked at my phone, and first thought it was a joke, right?
Yeah.
And then you realize it's true. And for me, I was shocked. And I think the majority of people, 99% of people, were shocked as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of as things start to play out, and as I mentioned there, like you peel back the layers of the onion, you could see how all of this kind of took place and how it happened, but none of us expected this. I don't think most of the people inside the organization, in fact, I know for a fact a lot of coaches were shocked by this. People were not really expecting this to take place. And Mike had mentioned he had been thinking about it since August or so. And then he made this decision, and obviously we'll unpack that entire decision from Mike's health to the issues with his coaching staff, or at least the tension between he and his coaching staff, to the AJ Preller press conference that I was on and asked AJ a couple of questions. But to answer your question first, I was shocked for sure that this took place. And then again, you start to really look at how all of it went down and his reasoning. And I guess you could see why it happened. I would like to flip that on you. And did you share as much shock as I did?
I called it since I've been covering the team, which, as anybody who the keen listener heard me say 6 years now, since 2019, I genuinely believe this was the most shocking thing the Padres have done in my time covering the team. Now, I know what people are saying, like, but the Soto trade, that was more of a thrill. And the Xander Bogaerts signing was more of a thrill. But to me, I not dismiss it, but I can almost put them in the bag of, well, it's AJ Preller and he's ready to do anything at any time. And also, we had gotten rumors about Juan Soto. We had gotten rumors that they were offering money to Judge and Trey Turner. So I was like, yeah, this is still wild, and I'm surprised by it. But bottom line is, you could put that under the tent pool of AJ Preller be making moves. This one, I mean, when Bob Melvin was let go, it was like, well, those two really acrimonious relationship has been reported by a bunch of people. But for this, it's like, oh my God, like he's 57. That was the first thing I did, by the way. One of the first things I did, I was like, oh, is he like 70? I looked it up. I was like, he's 57 years old. That's like nothing. That's like being in high school for a manager in baseball. What are we kidding? You know what I mean? So I was super shocked about that part. And of course, conspiracy theories abound all over the place. But I also, from everyone I have heard from, and whether it be public or unpublic, that it's just no one expected this. This is not something that there was writing on the wall. Maybe AJ Preller, it was written about in the Dennis Lynn article for The Athletic that AJ Preller was not super surprised. He's like, yeah, I get it. Like, you seem drained. That would be the only person that might know, though, right? Like, so this is just one of those situations that it just raises so many more questions. And at the very minimum, the Padres are simply never boring, Ben. Never boring. There's always something going on here.
There is never a dull moment with the San Diego Padres, and I've heard a lot of things be thrown around after this happened. The Padres forced AJ, or not AJ, the Padres forced Mike Shildt out. Yeah. The Padres fired Mike Shildt and are painting it off this way. I think, if you ask just my personal opinion, that two things can be very true at the same time. I think Mike was genuinely burned out. But I think probably part of the reason he was burned out is he couldn't manage to the style that he liked to, and that his staff was starting to wear out on Mike, and that they just didn't like the way that he handled the staff. And obviously, if you've read Kevin Acey's article, you got insight as to a lot of what I'm referencing here with Mike Shildt maybe being really difficult and demanding of his staff. But I think that's probably just the way Mike Shildt is. And in fact, we know that that's the way Mike Shildt is, because look what happened in St. Louis, right? Like, we had proof in the pudding that this could take place. I still think it was a really good hire by the San Diego Padres. I think Mike Shildt stayed true to himself, and he pretty much decided that, look, I don't have the energy to try and deal with all this for another 162. My health is taking a toll. I'm getting actual death threats. Like, I think all the health things were true. I also think that Mike decided to retire, and the Padres said, okay, we're okay with that. They weren't going to try and talk him out of it. They weren't going to say, hey, Mike, don't do this. Don't do this. I think it kind of was just like a clean break. Mike, your health is in jeopardy a little bit. Your staff's kind of rubbing the wrong way. We're not going to push it anymore. Let's just have this clean break. That's kind of how I summed all of this up. And that's packing a lot into, a small 40 seconds, whatever I just had there.
No, I totally get you. But yeah, I think that's a great perspective. Like, it's totally possible that the Padres are like, oh my God, really? Hey, okay. I mean, if you got to do it, because as I've talked about on the show, I think that managers it's a tricky position to not understand the value, but understand how they do what they do, what it is that each manager does specifically. The best sometimes that you could go by is just win record. So that's going to be a thing now. Yet again, the Padres are in search for another manager. AJ Preller at his conference, being adamant that this is still a top tier job, that this is still one that has a lot of a bright future. You got a lot of stars. You've got ownership willing to spend, all that sort of stuff. And we're going to continue talking about that because we got to talk about Jake's ideal candidate, if he has one, to replace Mike Shildt. But first, guys, you need to take a second to talk about our sponsors. And one of those sponsors, folks, you know them, you love them. It is brought to you, the Locked On Padres podcast, by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. So don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less. That's it. On player projections, you want to bet on Patrick Mahomes touchdowns. You want to go Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown. Maybe not as much the latter. Philly doesn't know how to play offense with all pros, even though the quarterback is allegedly elite. But whatever you guys want, you could do it. And also, if they have it for baseball, they've got it for basketball. They've got a special promotion live right now, actually, for the Golden State Warriors and Los Angeles Lakers game on October 21st. Steph Curry is discounted to only needing more than half a point to win. Mix and match players from football, basketball, baseball to build your dream team lineup today, guys. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's oh so good to be right. And just like that, everybody, thriving and vibing into the second segment of this podcast. I don't know what happened to me during that ad read that I just couldn't pronounce words. I don't know what Mitching. What was I saying?
Dude, try doing that on live television all the time. I do it in front of tens of thousands of people.
I know. I'm like, what happened to my voice? I feel like the transition in. I don't know. Maybe something's going on. Something's in the air. There's something that could be in the air is the Mike Shildt firing. Maybe it's got everybody losing their minds right now. Let me ask you, Jake, though. Speaking of Mike Shildt, who, just plain and simple, who, if anyone, do you think is the replacement candidate that you like, that you've heard about, that the Padres should go after potentially?
Yeah, heard a bunch of names at this
Yeah.
point, and it's hard to be like that guy's definitely the right fit, and it's hard because you've had three managers that have lasted just 2 years, right? Between Jay Stingler, Bob Melvin, and now Mike Shildt, two of which left on their own accord. But
Mhm.
the guy selfishly I would love to get the job is Ruben Niebla, because I love the human being Ruben Niebla. I've never had
Yeah.
somebody treat me better as a media member in a clubhouse, everything like that. That being said, Ruben Niebla would be a rookie manager. I don't know if that's the route that they want to go. Some
Mhm.
other guys that definitely have popped up that I know I'm sure everyone has heard about is the AJ Ellis or the Ryan
Yeah.
Flaherty's, Benji Heel, guys like that. I've even heard Nick Hundley and Jake Peavy's name thrown around. There's Scott Service is internal, the
Yeah.
former Mariners,
Yep.
Albert Pujols. So there's a ton of names that have been tossed around. It's hard to be like, that guy is the one for the San Diego
Yeah.
Padres. That guy is the one. Now, the Albert Pujols one's interesting to me because the relationship with Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. But I don't know if the relationship with Manny and Fernando is as important as it used to be with some of these other hires that they've had.
Mhm.
And clearly the Padres have gone for veteran managers the last two times, and they've won. And I think the bigger way to answer this question, Javi, is that this team has been successful under three different managers. Made the playoffs with Jace, Bob, and Mike. The roster is good. Who can you have that's going to be here and be stable? They need some longevity at this managerial position.
Mhm.
Who that guy is, that's hard for me to predict. I think AJ Preller needs to do that due diligence to where it isn't just 2 years and they're going through manager after manager after manager. If you made me pick a name, I'm Team Ruben Niebla. That's more so because I love the human. Obviously, what he's done with the pitching staff is great, but it's different going from a pitching coach to a manager of an entire ball club.
Yeah, I'll reiterate what I said the other day for those who missed it on the podcast. You can look at my full breakdown, but I don't have yet an ideal candidate. I think this is actually low key like a tricky team to
Yeah.
find, like because you've got young stars, you've got veteran stars, you've got it being a whole new thing. San Diego's never been this relevant before. So I sometimes struggle. I lean towards, let's get someone young and innovative and whatnot, and almost like get someone who's just going to do crazy things with the lineup and just try and experiment just for sake of having something new that isn't just, hey, I trust my guys and we'll do that. Maybe, right? Let's just for sake of changing. But at the same time, I'm also like, you know what? Having someone who's like seen it all when it comes to everything in baseball to deal with all the drama this team has had over the past few years also makes sense. My prediction, though, has been Scott Service, just because of a similar arc that Mike Shildt had. Hired after leaving the Mariners after being fired, right? Shildt hired after a good season, same thing with Service, then joins in a special role, then gets elevated. Service also have some connection with AJ Preller. So it's just a prediction, not necessarily who I want. I don't know yet, but I feel you, man. I mean, it's going to be the big question for the offseason. I don't know if it'll be the first thing that happens, but we'll see. We're going to have to see. It's going to be very important. But Jake, I got some questions for you that we're going to ask today, and I think they're going to be a lot of fun. Let's get into them. Some mailbag questions, the real mailbag, where it's not just me answering them. So if you guys are sick of me, don't worry. It's okay. We got a couple comments on Yu Darvish that I wanted to ask you about. Rama Murray 9938 says, Padres need to find a way to get Darvish to retire and take a job in the front office. We need to keep putting together competitive rosters that make the playoffs and hopefully can get hot in the postseason like we did in 2022. And another thing from Darvish at Lil Casino Music says, move him to the bullpen. So your reaction to both of those crazy ideas, that I really am in a position where I'm like, I don't know, just try anything at this point. But what do you think, man, about Yu Darvish? And what's your just kind of temperature check on the guy too?
Yeah, the temperature check is I'm leaning towards the fact that I think that you might be retiring on his own accord here
Right.
soon. I was in the clubhouse after they lost to the Cubs in Game 3, and we spoke to you through an interpreter, and he definitely left the door wide open about giving it thought, trying to figure out what he wanted to do. And then I was on the press conference, the virtual press conference with AJ Preller earlier this week, talking about Yu Darvish. Really, it was Mike Shildt and all that, but Yu Darvish was brought up, and AJ kind of said, well, I think Yu's going to take the time to think about it. There definitely wasn't this hard and fast thing. It was like, yeah, Yu's coming back and he's going to do his thing. So I'm almost thinking that Yu may be leaning towards retirement anyways. And here's the one thing that I know about covering Yu Darvish is this man has so much pride, and he has so much pride in this organization that he will not put himself out there if he thinks he's going to hurt the team. If he thinks he cannot pitch at the capability he would be proud of, I really don't think Yu Darvish will go out there. with that being said, it's all about this offseason, whether he thinks he can get his body right, his arm right. I would not move Yu Darvish to the bullpen in any way. To answer that second question, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to put him in the bullpen. I get it in a little bit. I'm not trying to knock that question because maybe you would save his arm here and there, but I think if Yu does come back, it will be a very managed Yu Darvish. He's not going to be making a start every 5 days, and he's going to be taking care of his arm. But I've kind of the temperature to answer your question. It feels like Yu Darvish is close to retirement, if not going to retire before next season. That's my personal opinion based on what I've heard.
It's really tricky. First of all, on the bullpen thing, I agree with you. But I think that they should consider if he's still bad and he's still pitching next year. I think they should be like, hey, look, Roki Sasaki, look at how he's done for the Dodgers. Totally different situation. And I'm not just doing the international player thing, but he really struggled as a starter. They put him in the bullpen and he's doing okay there. So again, maybe you go Tim Lincecum back when the Giants did that. I'm just saying if he stinks and is doing what he was this year, 5.3 ERA, maybe it's at least worth trying it, right? But I think he is a starter and that's his thing. I've also just been following athletes for a long time, and I think it's very rare that they ever leave unless the league is like, yeah, you're done. You know what I mean? Like it's become increasingly more rare that athletes leave, money on the table and or leave when there's still a team that has interest. But I'm with you, man. He also had the mental health thing last year, where he took a leave from the team. That's worth bringing up. The team obviously honored that fully, as they should. There is something about him. He has a crazy work ethic. All the people, Andy McCullough from The Athletic, when I was talked about him years ago on this podcast, talking about like that's the big thing with him. He is also a baseball rat. Maybe not the baseball rat like Jackson Merrill, where he's like this really out there personality, and you see him, he's sliding all over the place. But I think Yu's like this perfectionist, and I really could see a world in which he's like, you know what, man, this is tough. And yes, athletes like do they want to go out the way that he went out, right? 1 inning in the playoff game. But it's also possible he might be like, I don't care about all that. What I care about is, am I good anymore? And am I going to just be this guy that we're burdened with if he is just a 5.3 ERA guy who can occasionally throw a good start? I could really see it, man. That's where I'm leaning to. I don't think they'd have to make him retire or anything like that. Not that they would. I think if there's a guy who could do it, I think it could be Yu Darvish, especially because this was a really tough season. He was supposed to come back earlier. It was supposed to be like May, June. He ends up coming back like late July. So like, I'm wondering, is he going to be like, you know what? I may be done here. Maybe join the team in a front office role. Maybe go and pitch in Japan, right? Maybe go coach in Japan, anything like that. Take the Masahiro Tanaka route, whatever it is. It's definitely it's like the worst kept secret, I think, storyline for the offseason is Yu Darvish going to retire?
Yeah, I really feel like he is close. If he's not going to do it this year, definitely within the next couple of years. But I have a feeling that he's either going to come back and be really, really sharp because he's not going to let himself not be, or he's going to call it a career.
Absolutely, man. But we're not done yet, folks. With this podcast, you may be calling it quits potentially, but we are not on the Locked On Padres podcast, guys. We got to talk about Juan Soto because why not? Because I keep getting mailbag questions about him, and it's fun relitigating that trade. So we're going to do that in just a second. But first, let me talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, and that is FanDuel. With the NFL season here, NFL, let me tell you, big sport, very popular, very fun on Sundays with the friends and pals. And FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You want to bet on the Chargers? You want to go and say, you know what? I believe in the Trevor Lawrence thing. I'm just naming random players right now, but whatever you want, parlays, player props, you can follow the games live if you feel like, hey, okay. Let's be real, guys. The Jets ain't winning this game. I don't care if they're up by 10. Then you could do that too during the game. It's great. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And just like that, everybody, we are back in the final segment, the waning moments of this fun Friday edition of Locked On Padres podcast. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. You can follow Jake on Twitter at Jake Garegnani, Twitter/X. And you can also find me on Twitter/X at Blue Sky at Javipeno, Javiipeno, although I am admittedly in hibernation, and frankly, I've been enjoying it. But you can still follow me on there if you'd like, when I do potentially make my return. Let's get into the last mailbag question, Jake. This one about Juan Soto. At Cam Wordplay says, Javi, as we both sit here watching the playoffs, so yeah, this is a little bit old, but still, as we both sit here watching the playoffs proceed without Michael King, Dylan Cease, and for that matter, Johnny Brito and Kyle Higashioka, are you ready to agree with me that the Padres hands down lost the Juan Soto trade? In Soto's only complete season with the Padres, he failed to lead them to the playoffs while playing a big part in the Yankees World Series run last year. The Padres got good value out of King and Higashioka last year and converted Drew Thorpe into Dylan Cease, but ultimately they failed to get the Padres to the World Series, and the team got very little quality out of them this year, including less than 5 innings in the playoffs. Heck, even Trent Grisham has resurrected his career and is still playing October baseball. Not anymore, but you guys get my point. Yet, in all likelihood, none of those players are with the team next year, meaning King and Cease, and we have some big holes for Preller to fill again. Someone also replied on that saying Preller had an outlier season last year, which I disagree with. But overall, this is the question that's going to pop up forever. And I am very curious to hear your thoughts on it. Believe it or not, we have not talked about it. I think you and I, our early interaction with Soto was just, oh my God, when it happened. And it was incredible. I was in the middle of a Zoom call and my heart jumped out of my chest. It was one of the best moments of my life. It was just like crazy just that happened. What is your take? Did the Padres lose the Juan Soto trade officially, do you think?
Yeah, I love that people always have to have a win and a lose
right.
when it comes to trades, when trades really are not that black and white, let's be honest. I mean, you really won't know until you see what happens with all the pieces in the Nationals organization. And I know James Wood did some cool things, and CJ Abrams had a moment here and there, but where are the Nationals right now? And I am not a prospect hugger. We've had this conversation many a times on your podcast.
No, you weren't.
I think they brought in Juan Soto. They made a run to the NLCS, got that close to a World Series, got close to winning a World Series, which was the goal of bringing in Juan Soto, pretty much knowing you weren't going to re-sign him. I mean, the guy got almost $800 million. The Padres never really had that opportunity. They brought him in for that window to try and win. They got damn close, Javi. They didn't pull it off. I don't think that means they lost the trade. They did end up getting Michael King, who's been a huge part of the other postseason runs that the Padres have made, and some of the other pieces that came.
I would argue last year, by the way. I'd argue they were I would argue, even though they made the NLCS in 22, I think they had a better chance last year, and Michael King was part of that.
And so he's put together, AJ being, some really good rosters with those trades that he made to get Soto and then to move Soto. And then Soto got his $800 million to go play for the Mets. So to say that this was a flat out loss of a trade, I just don't agree with it. Yes, the Padres did not win a World Series when Juan Soto was here. The Padres have never won a World Series. AJ Preller is doing everything in his power to try and get to that point. And to me, I'm not seeing CJ Abrams and James Wood and Mackenzie Gore winning a World Series with the Nationals right now by any means. Who knows? Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe they will. But I'm not going to sit here and say it's a complete loss by any means, because they tried to hit their window. They did a really good job of it, and they came up just a little bit short. I think the pieces that he gave up and the pieces that they got back during the Soto deal was not a loss. That's my personal thoughts.
I totally get everything you're saying. I've gone back and forth on this 100 times. And the reason I've gone back 100 times is because it's two separate big things that happen here. The initial trade and then what I call the salvage trade. And I think that now that we know that, I don't care, in my opinion, I don't care the late Peter Seidler, how much you want to keep him. I don't think you're outbidding Steve Cohen. I just don't think you're doing it. And I don't even know if you should. Jake, this is really hard. Because when it was happening, when the rumors were coming out, I believe that the Padres already had some stars. Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., they had a good team. So my thing was, let's just save the assets, right? And this year, CJ Abrams and James Wood were pretty good players. James Wood fell apart in the second half, but still 31 home runs this young. CJ Abrams improving, and they're still 22 and 24 respectively. Mackenzie Gore at age 26. I think that he ended with a 4 ERA. The peripherals were better. He fell apart in the second half. I don't know what happened, but at the same time, I'm like, well, then if they don't do the trade, they don't get Michael King and Dylan Cease. And I think that I would rather have that than Mackenzie Gore. But it's so tough. I think the real move that we should really be talking about is Xander Bogaerts, only because that's a big payroll allotment. And if you don't use your last chip of payroll? Can you maybe sign a couple other players, or let's just keep that open? That way we're not, locked into this roster. I think that's one that's more worthy of litigating. But it's really tough, man, because I would love right now if they were just like James Woods in left field for the next 6 years. You got CJ Abrams instead of that big Bogarts contract at shortstop. Although I think Bogarts right now is a better player, but it's close, and it's probably not going to be that way for long as CJ Abrams enters his prime. You still got Susanna, which is fine. They sold high on Hassel, it looks like, which was okay, if everybody remembers Robert Hassel. But it's just so easy to be like, we should have done this and that. I'm going to lean towards, because it's, man, when you give up that much and it's only for 2 years of a guy, it's tough. But at the same time, NLCS, you see what I mean? I'm literally working through it right now. And then also, it's not Soto's fault that literally every single player aside from him just completely stunk in the clutch in 2023. It was one of the least clutch teams by Fangraphs approximations and statistics since 1994, right? Like literally they just refused to drive anybody in. That's not like a Soto thing. That's a weird cosmic entities lashing out against us type of thing. So I think overall, if they had to trade him and it was a salary dump thing, then I would say, yes, it's a loss. But I just think what they got back in Dylan Cease and Michael King, it's going to be tough if they don't get to bring back either of them, especially Michael King. But to me, you got 2 shots out of it. And so as a result, I can't call it a full loss. You want to say, Javi, I kind of would have liked it. I don't hate it, but I would have liked it. That I agree with. But as a total loss, nah, man, a total loss is like back when they traded for Austin Nola and they gave up Andres Muniz and Ty France, who was at least really good for 2 years. That you could call a total loss. Maybe when they traded for Adam Frazier, maybe that one. But for this one, man, I don't know, dude. Like, at least we got the memories. At least we have the memories. At least we have the joy. And again, I don't know if maybe they didn't realize how much Soto was going to get paid. And over the course of 2024, they're like, oh, God. Like, he's getting $600 million. We just got to go for it this year. I don't know, but I just don't think it's a total loss.
I think they very much knew how much the man was going to make. I think they knew it was going to be that short rental. I think I'd push back on the idea that baseball isn't linear either. You can't just say that, hey, if they didn't do this, this player would be here and they would have won a World Series. Like, it just doesn't work that way. And so they had their window that they were trying to get that World Series. And again, they got right. I mean, you're talking, 7 wins away from a team being a World Series champion. And this conversation never, ever, ever happens because they did win a World Series. So I think I have always been a firm believer when the Mason Miller trade, all this stuff happened this year. I'm always a firm believer of having a general manager that gives your team the opportunity to make a serious, deep October run is all any fan should ask for. Prospect hugging, all this stuff, I just don't see that working out that often. Whereas you have a guy who's going for it year in, year out. He's finding ways to do it. To me, I'm appreciative of that as somebody that covers the team, follows the team, watches the teams. I mean, you could be a fan of the Kansas City Royals and have nothing ever happen too. I mean, I appreciate people that go for it. And you know what? Be a go-getter. I'm a huge fan of it. I just can't sit here and say it's a total loss by any means.
I'm with you. I will say, now that they have the stars, I think they should prospect hug a little bit more. But that is a topic for another episode, guys. You've been listening to the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to go check me out on the socials if you want, Twitter/X at Javipeno, JVIIPENO. You can check out Jake on there as well and follow his work over at CBS 8 San Diego, where you will be getting all the breaking news when Mike Shildt and in this case, whoever the replacement is, you'll be hearing that from them probably immediately and with interviews and all that sort of stuff. And Jake will, of course, be back on the show at some point in the offseason, I imagine, when the hiring is made. But Jake, any final words you'd like to say for the people before we sign off?
You wish Mike Shildt the best of luck here, and hopefully the next guy is the one that can get it done, Javi. Hopefully the next guy is the one that can get it done.
Absolutely bad. And yeah, by the way, good point by Cam Wordplay about Trent Grisham. But he was bad, by the way, for that first year with the Yankees. It wasn't just he immediately got better. He was also bad last year for them. So I'm just saying. But I appreciate your guys' comments. Leave them as well in the description for Monday's mailbag episode as well. Going to continue the player review series too. But until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. my five faithful homies. Take care.